You want to save your country, the United States, from a communist takeover, which is actually a dictatorship takeover, using communism as a guise. The American people are asleep, don't pay attention, don't care. So that way is not going to work. So what you've got to do is attack the source directly. And the way to do that is from outer space. About the video Dust in the Wind, this is a reference to interstellar dust and gas that passes freely through our solar system, passes freely through the so-called boundary, border, barrier imposed by this somewhat theoretical heliosphere, 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 which is a bubble of solar wind emanating, a bubble created by solar wind emanating from the sun that goes out so far and stops. So if you're thinking of propelling your spacecraft across the galaxy with solar wind, you have a hell of a time getting away from the Earth, because the solar wind goes out about 100 astronomical units, 90 astronomical units, and stops. 70 or 80 or 90 astronomical units and stops. And it is composed of electrons moving very fast, this solar wind. It's not going to push much. It ain't going to push nothing, in my opinion, because electrons have almost zero mass. Electrons, no matter how fast they're traveling, don't have enough mass to push anything, but however they are negatively charged, and they create a magnetic shield around the entire solar system that may impede charged particles. And if I would assume that a cosmic particle, which I assume is a proton, could possibly be repelled or impeded by this bubble. But a hydrogen atom is not electrically charged, it's neutral, and this magnetic bubble has no effect on neutral atoms, and they pass right on through. And they pass right on through the solar system and make contact with the sun. The only problem is the hydrogen atoms are very, very thin. So in my theory, they could cause the sun to brighten, but it would be very slight. But if we happen to pass through a concentrated clump, in this cloud of hydrogen interstellar medium, a nebulous cloud, it could have a noticeable effect on the sun, and in the course of 100 years could warm the oceans enough that the Earth's atmosphere warmed enough that our temperature could increase by 1 or perhaps 2 degrees global average in the space of 100 years. So the temperature changes I'm talking about are small and gradual. My theory addresses short-term, slight climate change, such as, you can Google, quote, little ice age, unquote. You can Google medieval warm period. I have a hell of a time spelling medieval, but you might need to know how to spell it to Google it. M-I-D-I-E-V-E-L. It just means middle. That word means Middle Ages. The Middle Ages. Medieval is another word for Middle Ages, in between the Dark Ages and the Renaissance. Now I'd like to address your questions, Mr. Lucky. You said, I guess it depends where we're at in the elliptical trail, which will determine the type of climate we're experiencing. Exactly right. That's it. That you got the gist of the video. We're passing through clouds. Some of these clouds are less dense, some are more dense. Sometimes we're at the edge of a cloud, sometimes we're between clouds. And these clouds contain hydrogen. We now know, and we now know that the hydrogen does indeed pass through the solar system, pass through the heliosphere. So where are we now, and where will we be in the next 30 years? Well, NASA admits that we are inside what they call the local cloud. The yellow line shows our direction of movement. The blue lines show the direction of movement of this cloud, which is about 50 light years by 25 light years in measurement. We're moving around the galactic core, which is off to the right, in a wide spiral round and round the galaxy in the direction of the yellow line. The solar wind, these electrons from the sun, travel at 2 million miles per hour sometimes. The things that interfere with satellite communications, like a proton event, a coronal ejection from the sun, and traveling at 2 million miles per hour. How long does it take to reach the Earth? Well, the sun is 93 million miles away. It takes several days for this burst of a solar flare to reach the Earth. If a cold snap wiped out the dinosaurs, for example, just theorizing, just talking off the top of my head, it would not have impacted mammals, small mammals with a faster metabolism, warm-blooded as opposed to cold-blooded. Cold-blooded animals would have had a hell of a time if the Earth turned cooler and remained cool for a long time. My guess is that the Earth's climate has swung hot and cold, not terribly hot and not terribly cold, but it swung back and forth, and each time it did so, it stressed certain species. I don't really have a firm opinion about the dinosaurs, the extinction of the dinosaurs, but I can see how that cold weather exterminated a lot of animals, not necessarily whole species, but it would have stressed species. And when we're in a period of cold, we're also in a period of intense cosmic radiation, which I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, but intense radiation could increase the rate of mutations. What is the time span of one cycle? How long does it take before the Earth spikes again hot? This is based on the Vostok ice core chart, the very same chart that Al Gore parades around in his traveling salvation show. That chart shows that the temperature spikes occur approximately every 110,000 years. Mr. Lucky, you asked about the Big Bang. Yeah, I assume the Big Bang is correct. It's actually assumed more than the Big Bang. I assume that the universe explodes, expands, slows down, then contracts slowly, collapses, and another Big Bang occurs. And I call this the Big Pulse. So, okay, but I don't have time to go into things that are above my pay grade. What I wanted to get across to you here is to introduce you to the basics of science so you can begin to communicate with someone, for example, employed at NASA, who needs to be shown that Al Gore's theory is absolutely bogus. In fact, the stars and this interstellar medium determine the Earth's short-term climate, meaning climate changes that occur within a space of 1,000 years. This will defund the KGB, who receive income from Al Gore's carbon tax. The Russians pay nothing to emit carbon dioxide. Europeans are not only buying their petroleum from Russia, the biggest oil exporter, petroleum exporter, fossil fuels exporter in the world. They not only pay for the fuel, they pay to pollute the earth with nasty carbon dioxide. Nasty carbon dioxide. It is a minute trace gas which plants are starving for. It'll always be a trace gas. Suppose it reflects infrared light, absorbs and reflects infrared light. That's bogus. Everything absorbs and reflects infrared light. So with the basics of science in mind, you might be able to communicate with some scientists who just might be able to influence Congress to stop Obama's campaign to economically terrorize the United States.